5:20.
I'm doing, Ms. Williams is doing the
Saying the
flag.
pledge.
Saying the pledge. I love that.
Sarah,
Yes.
Walker said she'll second that motion on that at 10.2.
Okay.
You just look at me.
And,
You'll do that before we start,
Okay,
as an addendum.
okay.
since you're gonna do the
Pledge.
pledge this month, next month we'll do the prayer and we'll do the pledge.
Sure.
And, she gonna tell her where that 10.2, but you tell us it.
Are you gonna be here later? Okay.
Thank you for being.
Did your husband have appointments with you?
No, I took my granddaughter and my son, her daddy.
Okay.
It is 5:30. We're up. All righty. Good evening, everyone. It is June 16th. It's hot outside. We're going to begin. First order of business, we always ask for public comments. Are there any public comments? There being none, I call this meeting to order. Invocation will be by myself and the flag salute by our Vice President, Ms. Williams. The students are out this summer, so it's on the board. So, bow your heads. Lord, thank you, first of all, for all that you've already done, all that you're doing, and all that you're going to do. As we enter into this meeting, let us keep our minds on the vision and the mission of the district. As we leave this place, give us all traveling grace and mercy so that we reach our destination safely. We ask all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Your parent here. Stand, please, for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you. Ms. McLean, will you read the vision and mission statements for us?
Yes. The vision statement is world-class schools for world-class students. And the mission statement, the North Little Rock School District and the community will provide for achievement, accountability, acceptance, and the necessary assets in the pursuit of each student's educational success.
And roll call of officers?
Dr. Reddis,
Here.
Mrs. Williams,
Here.
Ms. Person West,
Present.
Mrs. Temple,
Here.
Mrs. Wacom,
Here.
Mrs. McLean,
Here.
and Mr. Steele.
Before we go to number 5 on the agenda, I'm asking for a motion to amend the agenda to add 10.6A, which would be under the superintendent's performance incentive bonus for amendment, first amendment to the superintendent's contract.
Dr. Redis,
Yes.
I so move that we add an addendum to 10.2A for Dr. Paluski's,
10.6A.
for Dr. Paluski's contract.
Second.
It has been moved and second that we add 10.6A, which is first amendment to the superintendent's contract. Since it's a personnel issue, there can be no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It has been added. We are ready for number 5. Are there any recognitions?
There are none.
Okay, let's move on. Executive closed session. Executive closed session per North Florida School District Policy 1.14A stating that private or closed discussions by the board may occur as part of a regular or a special board meeting. Executive sessions may be held only for the purpose of considering employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, disciplining, or resignation of an employee, or to discuss matters of pupil punishment if requested by the parent or legal guardian. No resolution, agreement, or motion considered in the executive session shall be legally binding unless the board reconvenes in public session and presents the item for vote of the membership. Further, Arkansas Code Title 25, Chapter 19, Section 106-2C1 states, the specific purpose of the executive session shall be announced in public before going into executive session. Please join me in the executive closed session for discussing the following matters: employment, appointment, promotion, resignation of an employee, and the superintendent's contract.
Thanks. Yes, they do. You look lonely all week. I know, it's like, he's in his office. Oh, what you been doing all this other time, right?
Don't tell them I said that. No, I truly do. I sent invitations today. I said, I hope you guys learned a lot. I said, I absolutely missed you. God's always true.
You got everything you need.
I have managed, but yes, there's probably some things that have been messed up along the way. That somebody, one person.
Oh, you did on yourself?
And he was like, did you check this? You check that? I was like, yes. He was like, 20 questions.
Yes, now
Are we back on? All righty. We're down to board member involvement. Any board member involvement?
Reluctantly, let me see, I don't think I have, involved in some online training, and we had a, conference that I was a part of. I'm trying to think of which one. I know I did a virtual conference, this month, and with no schools to visit, so everything was kind of peaceful and quiet.
Anyone else?
Ms. Ward, Natalie, yes, you have, you on the virtual conference.
Super.
I know I was, but I didn't, it's all good.
Dr. Paluski?
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, members of our Board of Education, I'll go quickly. On May the 31st, we had our first district-wide job fair. I want to recognize our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Tori Hooper. That was her brainchild, with along as HR, and we had a whole group of everybody get behind that. We did that downstairs in the cafeteria. It was well attended, I thought. On June 1st was my monthly meeting with the mayor and his department heads. On June 2nd, I had an opportunity with the mayor and Mr. Birch to attend the groundbreaking of Safe Foods expansion here in North Little Rock. It's a biotech company. On the 2nd of January, I had an opportunity to attend district-wide professional learning community. It's an initiative by the State Department where I had an opportunity to go to the BB Co-op with other area superintendents in the area. On the 2nd, I also had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Montgomery about the youth summit that we're planning for in the fall. On the June 8th, I had an opportunity to have lunch here with Senator Chesterfield and get to know her and questions that she had about our school district, and we had an awesome conversation. On the 9th, I finished this upcoming year's Tier 1 finance training. On June the 10th, I had an opportunity to attend my colleague Mr. Poor's celebration as he's getting ready to retire. And the first time I'd gone to the Great Hall at the Clinton Library. And that is a wonderful venue if you've never been there. And today, on the 16th, I had an opportunity to meet Pastor Richardson with Mr. Steele, one of our local pastors right down here. And they had a youth program that we had a chance to visit today.
Awesome. I know we're out for the summer. Is there a CPPC or LPPC report?
No, ma'am.
All righty. I like it when we move right along. Informational items, 9.1 Dyslexia program.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, I'd like to welcome my colleague, Ms. Gretchen McCoy, our dyslexia coordinator, and Ms. Amanda Powell, who's also our dyslexia coordinator, to give us an overview, a high-level overview of our dyslexia program. So I will turn it over to these fabulous leaders.
Okay, good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Paluski. I am Amanda Powell.
And I'm Gretchen McCoy.
We are here this evening to discuss dyslexia law in Arkansas, what some of our characteristics are that you would see in a student with dyslexia, and our district screening process. We will discuss interventions in our elementary and secondary buildings. We're going to take a look at NWEA data and compare school-wide growth data to students who are receiving interventions. Lastly, we will identify those campuses that have the least and greatest amount of growth as it relates to our students who receive interventions. This is the definition of dyslexia as it is outlined in the law. Dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurological in origin. This means it's actually something that's occurring in the brain and not in the eyes. Dyslexia is characterized by students having difficulty with recognizing words. Students struggle with spelling and figuring out those longer words, or having the ability to break those words into smaller parts. This is typically due to an issue with hearing all of the sounds in words, or being able to manipulate those sounds. Students with characteristics of dyslexia tend to have strengths in other areas, such as math or art.
So that's the law and the definition will keep coming up because it plays a part in everything else that we're going to talk about. So when you think about characteristics of dyslexia, It is one of the most common learning disabilities. Research has really taken off with dyslexia. So there's also indicators, what you're gonna notice about younger students versus older students. In younger students, what we might see is speech delays, and just know that these are just some things. It's not saying that this is definite, but there might be some speech delays. They mispronounce words. They also have a hard time. The foundational pieces of sounds is critical when it comes to dyslexia, so they have a hard time with even easy words to say, like cat, at, and hear the sounds within that word. And then they have difficulty with remembering letter names, and then when you attach it to sounds, they have difficulty at keeping the letters with the sounds. But when you get to older students, can y'all hear me okay? When you get to older students, it's going to look like when they're reading, it may be slow and labored. They have a hard time with summarizing what they've read, and then also anything that has memorization or repetition, you may see that they really struggle with that. So that kind of gives you an idea, and this is what we talk with teachers about. So, you know, if they're seeing these things, or parents, it's a good thing to talk to them about. There's a lot of research with dyslexia, but along with that, you're going to get a lot of myths or misinformation. So as Amanda pointed out with that definition, it is a brain issue. It's neurological. The pathways are not firing correctly. It's not a visual problem. So we get a lot of people will say, well, they're seeing the letters backwards, or they're writing the letters backwards. That's not a part of dyslexia. It does occur quite a bit, but it wouldn't be part of dyslexia. Sometimes you hear that it's a lack of intelligence, when actually normal or above average IQ is what you're going to see with your students with dyslexia. They might also display like a lack of motivation, but usually that's a covering for they have struggled for so long that it's just a way to disguise the fact that they don't know how to read. And it's not laziness either. And then the other myth would be that it's something that children outgrow. What is so exciting is they will not outgrow it, but we have interventions in place where we can give them strategies. There's things they can do to help their spelling, so that even though they may struggle with it, they'll have ways to cope and become very successful. So the research has really done a lot over time. So those are some of the characteristics. Okay, this is where it gets technical, but we did want to share with you the law states that there's things that we have to do within this state to make sure that we're screening for students with characteristics of dyslexia. So the first one is called an initial screener. And what that means is, and it is for K-12, we can assess any student. And by law, for K-2, we have to assess 3 times a year, beginning, middle, and end. Then, 3-12, you would assess more based on teacher, parent, those kind of things, if they're noticing some things happening. So we do those screeners. And they're going to screen those areas that we talked about from the definition. If you remember, I said to remember that definition. It's going to do sounds. It's going to talk about letter knowledge, decoding, which is being able to figure out words that they don't know, and then spelling. So it's assessing those areas. If they flag on the screener, so we have benchmarks, and say you're in first grade and you don't meet those benchmarks, you're below it, then by law, we move to a level 1 screening. Those are just assessments that are going to dig deeper in the areas that they're flagging on. And then the classroom teachers are able to pinpoint interventions and pinpoint where she's going to start her instruction. She's going to provide those interventions. If the student responds, that means it's not dyslexia. The teacher's filling that gap with that core instruction. If they don't respond, we're going to look a little more closely, and we may decide that we want to go on to level 2. That's where we come into play, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit more, but those are what the law requires when it comes to dyslexia and screening. So we wanted you to know, what does that look like in North Little Rock School District. So we worked with Archford Co-op and the MCLs last year, and we have these things in place. So we have initial screeners on our assessment calendars. The teachers do those, especially with K2, and the reason we keep going back to K2 is we want to catch it early, because if we catch it earlier, the gap is not as large and we can get them back on track. But we have those initial screeners. Then if they flag, we already have the level 1 assessments in place. The teachers know to do that. They progress monitor. And then if they feel that something else is going on, they refer them to us. That's when we come into play. We will assess any student that is referred, and it's just the 2 of us, so we do all those assessments. And what we're going to see is, are they flagging in some of these areas? We're going to know that they've had interventions. So if they're flagging, it means they're not responding, so there's probably something going on. It is not a diagnosis, but we're going to say we're seeing characteristics and that we can provide more intense interventions than the classroom teacher can. And hopefully, even if they're not characteristics of dyslexia, they have gaps, so we need to provide intervention, and we're gonna do that and hopefully see gains. So we do have, we are meeting the law in North Little Rock School District in that process.
Okay, now let's take a look at a breakdown of our program here in North Little Rock. We are currently serving 667 students in our district in grades kindergarten through 12. This past year, we had 25 full-time dyslexia interventionists. For the upcoming school year, we will have 28 full-time interventionists. This past year, we had 4 part-time interventionists. We will have 1 part-time interventionist this next year who will serve 3 dyslexia groups. Our interventionists also provide the interventions for all of our virtual students. We averaged a total of 28 to 30 virtual students this past year, which was about 7 groups that were going on throughout the school year for our virtual students to meet their needs.
So then, oh, go ahead.
Okay, here are the demographics for the students that are receiving services. So as you can see, it's broken down by gender and by race.
So then we wanted to break it down where you could see how many students are served in elementary, middle school, and high school. So in elementary, we had 409 students. It also breaks down for you how many interventionists. We have 2 in every building. I will tell you that elementary fluctuates a lot. It is where we do the most testing, so it may say that they serve 44 throughout their school year because they could be placed at any time. Those numbers do change, and elementary usually is the bulk of where we add the students. Then the next one will show the middle school. So we had 189 students, and we do have them at the academy too. So that shows you 6th grade, and I'll just tell you what we have to do is we have our current number of students receiving intervention, so you see 83, so then we have to look at 5th graders moving up, and so then we'll know how many next year 6th graders will have. So that's how we get projections for hiring and different things like that. 7, 8. Had 101 students currently. There are a lot of 6th graders moving up, 83. So with the 8th graders moving on, you can see how the numbers work, and that's how we make that projection as well. And then for high school, and I'll tell you that, since we started the program, we haven't been doing it for a long time, but we tested a lot in elementary. What you're seeing now is they're in the high school. So our numbers are going to keep increasing as they move up. But we had those students, we only had 4 seniors, so the number is not going down that much from our seniors graduating, but you can see the numbers for the academy and the high school. We do watch the data, and we're getting better at it and looking at it more closely. Our students with characteristics of dyslexia did show growth in their reading from fall to spring in 2021. And then they're also continuing to show growth, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into that in just a moment. But we want to point out that the reason that looking at growth is so important is that these students truly do have a disability, so they may not be able to perform alongside their peers at proficiency. They can get there, but it may take them a little bit longer. So looking at that growth is important because it shows they're moving towards that goal and they're closing that achievement gap.
Okay, so let's dig a little bit deeper into our data here in North Little Rock. So we worked alongside with Dr. Reynolds, and we were able to obtain an NWEA growth average for 2nd through 5th graders at each campus in our district. The blue bar is the average growth for that specific campus. The orange bar is the average growth of students with characteristics of dyslexia. So taking a closer look at Amboy, we can see a larger gap between the blue and orange bar than compared to schools like Boone Park and Crestwood. Our goal and our purpose is to decrease this gap between the school average and the dyslexia average. So on this page, we've just continued looking at the rest of our elementary schools. So we broke the data down the same way on this page. In some schools, the gap is smaller than others. Looking at Indian Hills, Lakewood, 7th Street, and Meadow Park's data, we can see that students with dyslexia are showing a good amount of growth compared to their peers. Looking at this data is truly exciting to us, and it really helps us drive home our purpose, and it just supports how the Wilson reading system can change the trajectory of a student's success in our district. So here's our secondary data. As you can see, the 6th grade campus and our high school campuses are both showing good growth. On this slide, we've identified our 3 schools with the least and greatest amount of growth. Amboy, Boone Park, and the 7/8 campus are our buildings that the dyslexia students are showing the least amount of growth compared to their peers. Indian Hills, Lakewood, and our high school, COE, are our buildings where our dyslexia students are showing the greatest amount of growth. Seeing this data really allows us to tailor our support. We have created an action plan for the upcoming year, determining different levels of support for each school based upon this data.
So we wanted to move from looking at the data, then what systems do we have in place? And, you know, we're still growing what we're doing. In 2019 and 20 was the first year that we did the district-wide implementation of Wilson Reading System. And we want you to know it is an accredited program by the International Dyslexia Association. And I think it's also important that it is aligned and made by the same Barbara Wilson created foundations, which is what we use in K2, and Just Words, which is our phonics programs. So they're cohesive. What the kids are getting with the dyslexia intervention, they're going to also have heard in the classroom, so it really creates that across the phonics programs, and they hear it, and then that helps extremely. We have also, Wilson Reading System has a training, intense training for the teachers that is phenomenal, and we trained 11 interventionists in it in 2019 and 20. Pandemic, we didn't train. We're back to training, and we've got 9 going through it, including Miss Powell and I. And then we talked about, so we'll have our level 1 certification in October. In 2019 to 2021, there were actually three dyslexia coordinators and 25 interventionists. And as you can see, we went down to 2 dyslexia coordinators and 29 interventionists. So we wanted to tell you a little bit about what we do as well. So as we told you, we are trained or being trained in the level 1 certification, and with that we will be able to provide continuing professional development to our teachers, build their capacity. We're really looking at instruction. We just had a meeting before this one with the State Department, the dyslexia person, and that's what we need to look at is instruction and how that's going. So we'll work with our teachers. We are both RISE trained, and we were involved in the RISE training that was done for K6 and 7-12 SPED staff and administrators. That was over 2 years because there was a pandemic in the middle. So we were part of that. We also, as I told you, when the students move to that level 2, we do all of the assessments. We score those assessments, and we call each parent and go over that with the students, whether they qualify or they do not. So we do that, and we have assessed 179 students this school year. We also order the teacher and student materials so that they can implement Wilson Reading System with fidelity, and we also then have to order the assessment materials in order to do level 2. And then we monitor the data and keep the records of those 667 students. We did want to tell you, with the help of Ms. Hale, we do cycle 7 every year, and the number of students that came through our building, so we have to keep up with who came through the building, who received interventions, was 752, but our actual number right now is 667. Another thing is there is an Act 1039 that requires us to give that information to the public. So we provide how many students we've tested, how many students we're seeing, and then Mr. Barnes puts that on the website for us. So that's another piece of it. So from all of that, we wanted you to know that our next steps are truly data-driven. We're going to look at how we can support and train our interventionists so that we're implementing this program to the best of our ability and get the best results. We really believe in creating literacy leaders. We've got some great interventionists within our department, and we want them to become leaders in their building so that that collaboration across the content areas will happen. And they're experts on reading and foundational skills. And sometimes in secondary, those teachers are not as familiar, so they're a great asset in the secondary level as well. We have got a lot of work to do with secondary. Secondary is different from elementary, and we are really working. We met with Mr. Leverett before this meeting to group our students better so that we can ensure accelerated growth. And we also have an academic reading class, and we want to make sure that we're developing, meeting all those standards that are included in that. And then we're just going to continue to monitor the data, look at it in different ways and more closely so that we can strengthen our program and continue to close the achievement gap, because we know that student success is the most important thing. We appreciate your time.
Ms. West, do you have any questions?
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you all brought this to light, because it's something that is needed. It is a big deal, and it is, you know, we just have to make sure that we help all students. But have you looked at, or have you found that maybe some of the discipline issues could be maybe a issue such as dyslexia or anything like that? Or what's the connection there? Have you made a connection with maybe some of the discipline issues and dyslexia that you found out later that they had dyslexia?
There can be connections between discipline or different things that the student, we can't narrow it down to just that it's a discipline issue. What we're going to look at is where are there gaps in their learning. There's a lot of factors that can play into that, but I think that would be something to look at, is how many students are, you know, with their discipline then are referred for dyslexia. We have not looked at that particular way to look at it, but I do know that that can play a part because they miss instruction for different reasons and things like that.
And do you know if this is something that is a hereditary type deal?
It is. So typically, you know, it is passed down. So we will see, like, a parent, when we're talking to parents, they'll say, oh, I struggled with this when I was in school. We just didn't know what it was. So we do see that quite often.
Yeah, and I just kind of go back to, elementary school. You just kind of shuffled that particular child off to special ed when it wasn't necessarily a special ed issue. And, or either you gave them the universal medicine of Ritalin, and that's kind of where they stood, and then they missed a lot of that instruction, and so that just kind of brings me back to that component of it, that you kind of know what it is and you have a name to put with it and you have an idea how to work with that.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes, and if you'll talk to people older, they'll say, well, I was just in SPED in school, and it was probably dyslexia. And now we just have better ways to determine the different things that are going on with students. So, yeah.
Ms. Wonkum?
Can you go back to the dyslexia demographics, please?
Sure.
You have a color copy and mine's black and white, so
Oh,
I'd like to
we're
look
sorry.
at that.
Yes,
If you
of
don't
course.
mind. I'm not mad.
There you go.
I just need to see the color. Very well written report.
Thank you.
Very good. So I'm hearing that we are following the law.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm hearing that we are having a plan in place. I'm hearing that there has been growth with our students already. And I hear there's proper training happening. So I'm pleased. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Ms. Wood? Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm
Ms.
so
Williams?
grateful that I feel so wonderful this evening, knowing that you spoke very highly of the Wilson Ready, because we invested so much
did.
money into that
Yes.
program.
Yes.
And to be offered to all students, to me, that is very, very gratifying, because they said Wilson Ready basically is a program that deals with expectations of students and not just what they want to do, but you're thinking at a higher level, knowing that they can do better. And I want to thank you for incorporating that our money is not being wasted. Thank you.
We really, truly are seeing a lot of growth with our students that are receiving the program, and, it makes us feel good too.
That is, well, thank you, and a wonderful report, by the way.
Ms. Temple?
Yeah, when you were talking about groups, what do you mean by groups? Like, do you take the kids together in a group, you work with them individually? I mean, can you expound on what you mean by groups?
Do you want to?
As far as when we were saying we met with
Yeah,
the 7th, 8th grade,
Well, when you were saying that you had groups, I just was wondering what
We-
you meant by groups.
so each teacher can, like in our secondary schools, each teacher can have 6 groups. So they can have 6 students in each group, so they can see up to 36 students. So what we really are trying to do in secondary, in elementary, it's a little bit different. They have a little bit more,
Flexible
yeah,
grouping.
it's easier for them to get it done. But in secondary, we really want to take the time and look at our students' end of the year assessments. We assess them on the WADE, which is what goes along with the Wilson rating system, and we can see their level of mastery as far as what they've been taught and if they've mastered it. So we really have spent a lot of time grouping our students together based upon that and based upon pacing, because some of our students are going to need more repetition and more time in those sub-steps versus some that can move a little bit quicker. So we really want to group those students according to that pacing and according to their skills, so that we can hone in on exactly what they need in order to see accelerated growth with our students.
Does it help to have them with each other? Do they help each other?
For sure. Yes, I do think, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Ms. McLean?
Yes, the data here is great. I love it. And it's wonderful to know that y'all are following this data and acting upon it. A question that I have is you have 667 students, and as Dot likes to say, we have 8,193 students in the district. So is there
People repeat it.
a percentage out there that you can kind of say generally, if you have a school population, you're gonna have this percent of students that would have dyslexia, or does that not exist, or?
Well, the law, or typically they say 15 to 20%. Yes, the research would say 15 to 20% of our population will display a characteristic of dyslexia. So there's a spectrum, some more severe than others, but our district right now is almost to 8% as a whole. But yes, 15 to 20% is what they say we see in the general population.
And of that 15 to 20%, like she said, it's a spectrum. So some of them may not need intense intervention. If they're getting the core phonics, some of them respond that way. But 1 in 5 may struggle. So that's what we kind of have to look at. So we're still moving towards that mark.
Is there a relationship with math with these students that have dyslexia? Do they also have problems in the math area?
They can, but they can also be strong in math and struggle in reading. But there can be some correlations between, but we're not gonna, we won't assess the math piece. We really are looking, with dyslexia, it goes back to the sounds, and it's so interesting, the manipulation of sounds, and how, like, if, I always give the example, if you say the word sling, now say sling, but say sling without ul, and you make a new word, sing. It is amazing, kids who cannot do that. And that's critical too when you think about reading and writing. When you go to look at a word and you're trying to match up the sounds and it's sling, but you can't put the letters in order and those kind of things, or you don't know, so you can't anticipate what you're going to see. Or if you go to write it, those different things. So it's with dyslexia, it's about the sounds, but they can have struggles with the numbers because it's hard for them to match up a symbol. So when you think about the numbers to match it up to what they see, like 3 is 3, they may struggle with that. But a lot of them are very strong in math. It's just interesting.
Okay, thanks.
We could do a whole nother presentation on that kind of stuff. But I know y'all do not want to hear that one. So.
Mr.
I was going to ask the same about technology, and they seem to be strong in technology as well.
A lot of them can be. It just, because it's not a visual issue. So, you know, if they're working on the computer, they can still handle those things. It'll just be, with them, they need a lot of multisensory, so the computer may not, there's a mosquito, I'm sorry. They need that multisensory and tactile piece, so the computer may not allow that piece, but they should be able to work fine on the computer. But their instruction may need to have more multisensory manipulatives and things like that to reinforce the skills.
How many of your students have dual diagnosis? Not just on a guesstimate.
A ballpark?
Yeah, ballpark. You could come back with that later, but good presentation.
Yeah, write that down and
Yes,
I
we
will
will,
send you
yes.
that information.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And dyslexia and discipline, and then I have the double. We'll look into that.
Great information.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Thank you
guys.
very much.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any of your parents here?
We're down to the 2022-2023 child nutrition contracts.
We'll welcome Miss Mary Lee Dennis, our Director of Child Nutrition.
Miss Mary Ann. Mary Lee.
You've been over there getting attacked by gnats or bugs.
I was back there and then I saw it here. I'm like, oh, here we go. Well, good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Paluski, staff, and community. My name is Mary Lee Dennis. I'm the Child Nutrition Director for the district, and I'm here this evening to present on our school year 22-23 child nutrition contracts. And really the purpose of this is just to provide an overview of information regarding those school year 22-23 formally bid nutrition contracts. And I did want to point out that all of these nutrition contracts are normal annual expenditures. So a little bit of background information on why we even have to formally bid these nutrition contracts. So We are governed by state, the Department of Education, and federal USDA procurement regulations, and these change from year to year based on the Consumer Price Index. So for school year 22-23, the small purchase threshold is $23,100. So that means anything over $23,100, so $23,101, we must formally bid those contracts. So therefore, the following contracts for the bread, the milk, and our prime vendor were bid this summer. And so a timeline, we began preparing for these contracts in the spring, and we emailed and publicly posted all of those bid documents on our website on May 9th. We gave the vendors plenty of time to respond back to those bids, with June 3rd at 9 a.m. being the deadline to submit those bid quotations back to our department. So let's start with bread. So bread is an annual expenditure, like I mentioned before, and it's normally around $40,000. So when we put out those bids, we emailed and publicly posted those, and we sent that to Bimbo Bakery, Cisco, Performance Food Group, Tankersley, and Benny Keith. And we received back 2 bids from Bimbo Bakery and Cisco. We have went through the bids, and we would like to select Cisco just due to Bimbo Bakery only delivering to our warehouse location. And also, so our vendor for bread this year was Harris Baking Company, and due to supply chain issues and just the way the economy is, they actually backed out of our bid and didn't even supply us for the full school year. So for the last month of school, we were having to finagle and try to find another vendor to supply us bread, because it is a required component of our meal pattern. So kind of limited to our vendors that we responded back to all of our quotes, but we did receive back 2 of those, and that is a part of our USDA regulations to at least have 2 of those back. So we would like to select Cisco due to that delivery limitation. So moving on to our milk, this is an annual expenditure, and it's around, and historically has been around, $300,000 a year. Again, we sent out the milk bid documents to Highland, Turner, Cisco, PFG, Tankersley, and Benny Keith on those same dates. And then we've also received back 2 quotes from these 2 companies, Highland and Cisco. And we went back and forth with selecting a vendor for the milk. Highland has the fresh milk that we normally are used to seeing, in the little pints, 8-ounce portions from Highland. And then Cisco did provide us quotes, but it's for shelf stable. So really the only difference is just the way that milk is processed. So, right, normal milk you buy it from the store has around a 10-day shelf life. With shelf stable, it just goes through a different processing mechanism, and so it's actually able to be consumed for up to 1 year. So the price differential on that milk is pretty exponential, and so that's why we've shifted to kind of want to stay at with the fresh milk. But either one has really good outcomes and opportunities, and so we've just historically kept with Highland, and we haven't had any major issues or concerns with the consumption of milk from Highland. And then prime vendor. So again, annual expenditure. This is an annual expenditure around $1.3 million. We did send out to all the major prime vendors in the area, and also again publicly posted that, but with Cisco, PFG, Tankersley, and Benny Keith. We only received back Cisco. And again, this is one of the major concerns with what we're seeing and dealing with supply chain issues and the economy. I reached out to the regional managers for PFG, Tankersley, and Benny Keith. I was in contact with the Benny Keith regional manager several times throughout our procurement timeline. And PFG and Tankersley both said we are struggling to keep up with our current contracts, and we are not bidding on any additional contracts for next school year at this moment. And so Cisco was our one that we received back. And honestly, Cisco's been the prime vendor for the department for several years. We have not had any issues or concerns with that vendor. Anytime something has came up, they've always been really great to work with in reconciling any issues or concerns that we have had, and it wasn't an issue or concern to move forward. So in conclusion, that's kind of just an overview of our contracts moving into school year 22-23. Again, all annual expenditures. It's just that time of year to renew those contracts. So if you have any questions, we'll begin.
Mr. Steele?
No
Any
question.
Ms. McLean?
No.
Ms. Stemper?
Yeah, I'm just curious, how much difference is it between the fresh milk and the shelf-stable milk?
So fresh milk fluctuates. They always each year give an escalation, de-escalation clause just because of the minerals and everything that's going on. So it usually ranges from fresh milk, 32 cents to 35 cents, roughly, fluctuates in the school year. The shelf-stable milk, I got a bid price back on that. The shelf-stable white milk is 49 cents, and the shelf-stable chocolate milk is 51 cents. I have reached back out to our distributor or our main rep at Cisco to say, hey, if we are looking into shifting from fresh milk to shelf-stable, could you get us a more competitive price? And he said he will contact the distributor, or not distributor, manufacturer. And so we are in the waiting phase to see if they could get that price down closer to match that fresh milk, because it would be some of the pros to going to shelf-stable milk is, for example, we send milk to and on field trips, or a student selects milk but then decides that they don't want it. It's shelf stable, so that milk could still be, as long as it hadn't been opened and the proper sanitation had been completed, that milk could be set out on a share table, for example, for another student to come up to select that milk, and it doesn't have to be consumed and kept at that temperature, so the shelf life, and we don't have to keep that at a temperature for a certain amount of time. So it does fluctuate about 10 cents or so, depending upon.
Well, I was just wondering, with supply chain issues, I didn't know if it wouldn't be a good idea to have some just sitting back.
And we do. We do have shelf-stable milk that we keep on hand just in case, because that's what we ran into a couple of times this school year, is that the fresh milk, they were having trouble with keeping up with the demand. So they would only bring us half capacity, or our milkman would only bring us white milk and not chocolate. And then there we were, if we didn't have a backup or shelf-stable in the warehouse to send out, we would not be in compliance, because federal regulation does say that we have to have provide a choice of milk, whether that be fat-free white or 1% white or fat-free chocolate, fat-free white. Either way, we just have to have and provide a choice of the milk to be in compliance. So we do keep some of that on hand just in case we run into some issues.
Okay, and then the only other question I had, you said the annual expenditures,
Mhm.
has that not gone up significantly?
So that's what I was just mentioning. The annual expenditure is like a yearly expenditure. So for this year, it was around, or for school year 21-22, it was around $300,000. Milk has kind of stayed the same within the past few years. It's gone up 1 to 2 cents. Milk's been the same. Now, our prime vendor bid, so that's that 1.3 is what this school year is spent. So if I was going back and looking at school year 19-20, and it has gone up tremendously. And our bid that we just got back from Cisco, yes, it's gone up at least 20% for next school year. And that happened all throughout this school year too. So normally we're in crazy times. So normally when we do these formally sealed bids, that contract is set in place. Those contracts that the vendor gives us, that's in place and stays the same for that whole entire contract time, that school year. Well, this year, due to supply chain issues, manufacturers and distributors, so first off, manufacturers were increasing their prices, and distributors, being that middleman who gets those items from the distributor, manufacturer, and brings those to us, they're also increasing their labor cost and fuel cost. So our prices this year never remain constant. So it's just been an up and down, and our normal contract items we could get 1 week and we couldn't get it again for 6 months, especially those dry goods. And so it's just been a major, major battle, not just here in Arkansas, but all over the country. And it is just still a major concern as we move into next school year, because those reimbursement amounts from the federal and state government are staying the same, and our food costs are increasing. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out for next school year.
Well, the report is excellent, but I figured there was some struggle there that wasn't reflected in this report.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Williams?
Good evening, Ms. Dennis.
Good evening.
Thank you. I first want to commend you on having the best report for the auditors that came into the district. And with that process, with you over $1,300,000 or some, you are to be commended, young lady, and the district certainly appreciate you. The board does. And then I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
All these years, what do they do with the food when they get through with it? They still say they're giving it to the pigs, do they dump it out? You know, have they found a way now to reserve that food, or they could give it to the homeless? Or what happens in all of these schools when they have all of that leftover food that the kids didn't like or didn't want to eat it?
Sure. So there's a couple of things that plays into that. First off, is we never want to have an overabundance of food left over at the end of the meal, right? That goes back to forecasting. We're able to forecast numbers based on, for example, if we serve chicken spaghetti, we can go back the last time that we served chicken spaghetti and see how our participation was. And so if our participation was down on some of those days, we can either say, okay, was that based on the food item, or was that because we put it next to another item that is a major favorite? So going back and looking at that historical data so that next time we don't serve chicken spaghetti and serve and prepare the same amount of servings and it go to waste. So forecasting issue number one, we want to avoid having a lot of food left over, so looking at the numbers. And then, so as I talk about the state and federal government, you know, they have these wonderful regulations that we are in our box and have to abide by. And when we use taxpayer dollars to purchase food, there's specific bounds to which we can utilize and give away taxpayer paid dollars. And so so what we have done for December, when Christmas break hit and then spring break, we went around to the schools and got the perishable food, so the fresh produce, the milk that was going to expire, that was just, we couldn't, you know, prevent that. And so we've been donating it. We made contacts with the Compassion Center in Little Rock, and I met with them, and we were able to go and donate all of our leftover the milk and the perishable food that was going to expire. So we have been donating that to the Compassion Center. I know there's several entities through the Arkansas Food Bank that we could distribute food to. So that is something that we can also, take more advantage of, especially around the times that we're going to be out of school for an extended period of time. So it's something that I definitely, having food left over is something that I try to want to prevent as much as possible, just because that goes back to finances and expenditures and money and everything that's coming into our program. But I just also want to make sure that the students who need food are fed before we are able to donate that to other in-need organizations.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis. So it's not going in the garbage can?
No. Some of it may be. And that's also why the federal government started an initiative called Offer versus Serve. So we do have minimum meal patterns that we have to meet, and the different meal components, right? We have meat, grain, vegetables, fruit, and milk that we have to offer every single day in certain amounts. But within that meal component, we could do Offer versus Serve, where the students have a choice. So they don't have to come in and select every single item that we have menued for that day. They have the choice to select 3 items, and one of those just has to be a half a cup of fruit or vegetable. So that also just kind of goes back to some research. Once the students have the option to select the menu items that they want to take, not just everything that's thrown on their plate, it also helps to eliminate plate waste, so that it's not just food and money going into the trash can. We want it to go into their bellies so that they can listen and learn and just reach their full potential. And I think that just goes back to listening to the students and listening to the menu items that they would like to see as well on our menu.
That's very good. Thank you.
Ms. Wonka?
Okay, so to follow up on Dorothy's question, so I heard that we donate the food, that's awesome.
Mhm.
But can we not donate to our own North Little Rock pantry? I mean, because we have over 400, 700 kids of homeless, or who identify as homeless, so I'm thinking, let's make sure we feed our babies. So that's just my immediate thought. I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if that's outside of the box that we have to stay in. And then, do we have an alternative to cow's milk? So do we have like an almond milk or a rice milk or a soy milk due to allergies? Do we
Yes,
offer?
so we work very closely with each of the building's nurses. So anytime a student comes in, if they have any food allergies, we have a form that has to be completed by a health care provider. And once we receive that back, we do, if they have an allergy to dairy or anything, we do purchase, whether it be almond milk, rice milk, oat milk. We do provide them something of the same nutritional content that would normally be offered through the meal pattern. And then your first concern with the food waste for our own food pantry, that is a good. I'm not really sure. I don't know how that works. I think it would be fine as long as time and temperature, like, right, if we got done serving and then we could hold that at temp and it be in temp, the only thing would be just, cooling that at the right temperature. And if our food pantry here has a way to cool and keep that at temperature, so that if there's specific times that households come to pick up items, as long as that food was held and kept at temperature, I don't see a reason why, but I would want to make sure and get the state's approval to make sure that we would be in compliance with everything. But
I was just, so thinking along those lines, I know Bobby Riggins has 1 or 2 refrigerators and access to refrigerators. But then I'm even thinking our counselors could even keep a list of families that may be in need, that we can call them when we have an abundance, if we have an abundance.
yes.
So just thinking out loud.
Yeah, we'll look into it.
Yeah,
Be
for
happy
sure.
to.
Thank you for that.
Ms. West?
And great report, and,
It's a great report, yes.
to piggyback what Ms. Wonkum piggyback off of Ms. Williams, with that being said too, because I was kind of thinking along those lines too, as far as utilizing Ms. Riggins and her services available, but, as far as maybe, if you can repackage something and maybe have like a weekend pack or something like that, to kind of look into that, and something where it's kind of a grab and go type bag or whatever. But that is a real valid point and a real good idea. Going back to where you said that on the bread slide where Cisco, due to Bimbo Bakery only delivering to the warehouse location. So currently, are they delivering to each school, or do they have one place that they deliver and then somebody there delivers it to each school, or how does that work?
So this school year with our previous vendor Harris, they delivered to each school site. We do get USDA dollars, PAL dollars that we can spend through the DoD, Department of Defense, and all of those food items that we order come directly to the warehouse. And so we do ship specific items from our warehouse out to the schools. We do have a warehouse manager who he handles all of those deliveries, but currently our vendor had been delivering to each location. And so I was just thinking about the expenditure for bread, and then the cost of, if we went with Cisco, to be able to still deliver to each of those schools, what that expenditure would be, versus if we had Bimbo Bakery to deliver to the warehouse. That would mean we would have to hire an individual to help with that just amount of deliveries. And so the cost of adding an additional staff member to help with delivery from the central warehouse didn't outweigh the cost of the contract going with Cisco to deliver to each of those locations.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you so much.
The wonderful thing of going last, everybody asked all the questions that I had, so you did.
Yeah.
My questions were answered. So great report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis.
You can go.
It was a pleasure.
You forgot to ask her if her parents was here. 9.3, 2022-2023 Board of Education meeting dates.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, this is simply an information item on the projected dates for all of this upcoming academic year. We'll bring this back certainly to you for final approval and then put those out to the public as soon as you approve them.
Got it. Well, we're down to action items. Number 10.1, employment of personnel.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, the Superintendent recommends the employment of personnel as discussed in executive closed session.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the recommendation of hiring personnel.
Second.
Oh.
It has been moved and properly seconded that we accept the employment of personnel. Being that it is employment of personnel, there can be no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. It's been adopted. 10.2, Central Office Reorganization Plan Phase 2.
Chief Finks, we're so happy you didn't bring your cup with you. We thank you for that. We appreciate you.
What are you talking about?
I usually have a lovely Dallas Cowboy cup with me, and I left it outside.
We
Man,
thank
that's
you
the
for
wrong
that.
thing to say.
Well, Madam President, members of our Board of Education, for the record, my name is Greg Paluski, the proud superintendent of the North Little Rock School District, and joining me this evening is my colleague, Chief Hayward Finks, our Director of Safety, Security, and Emergency Medical Services. Before we begin, I just want to clarify that as part of my 100-day plan, which talked about reorganizing central office and our functions in phases, and certainly part of my goals is about reorganizing our functions in central office as it meets the needs of our schools. If you remember all the way back to May 5th, 2020, which was my actually first board meeting, after having some time to transition, one of the immediate concerns that I brought to your attention was my concern about safety and security. And I know when I've met with each one of you as I was entering this district that you brought that to my attention very, very quickly. I can also tell you that most recently we had a survey out to all of our parents, climate surveys that were to each of our individual sites. The number one theme across all of that data is the safety and the security of our students and as well as our faculty and staff. And I see everybody nodding their head that we all agree that this has to be and will always continue to be our number one priority. And certainly with the most recent school shooting that happened in Uvalde, Texas, not too far away, has certainly heightened, and more events that have certainly happened since then, has drawn all of our attention to the importance of safety and security. And before I turn it over to Chief Finks, I just want to recognize him as his leadership. You know, one of the initial things in 100 Day was to have a safety security assessment. With Chief's credentials, in about 4.5 months, he's been able to assess the current state of reality in the North Little Rock School District, which he's going to share with you this evening, which is also going to be the foundation or data in the recommendation that I will be making to you in reorganizing the Safety, Security, and Emergency Medical Services Department before you. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Chief Finks.
Thank you. Madam President, directors, Dr. Paluski, It's a pleasure. I am Hayward Finks, the Director of Safety, Security, and Emergency Medical Services for the North Little Rock School District. I'm happy to be here this afternoon to present a recommendation for enhancement and improvements of the safety of the North Little Rock School District. And so, upon being hired as the Director of Safety and Security, as Dr. Paluski alluded to, I was tasked with creating or conducting an assessment of the needs of the district as they pertain to safety, security, emergency medical services. And so the assessment includes information and input from staff, from parents, and from students, as well as other stakeholders to the North Little Rock School District. The North Little Rock School District Safety and Security Department currently consists of a director that has 5 direct reports. And that would be Safety Systems Administrator, which is currently vacant, an investigator, part-time, Sergeant Ian Hinton, a nurse supervisor, Nurse Amanda Stuckey, a COVID-19 point of contact, Nurse Tanya Green, and an administrative assistant, Mrs. Jacqueline Burnett. Additionally, there are currently 44.
Madam President?
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, I got it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Page
To
2.
the back.
I'm sorry.
Still on
I
page
needed
2.
the
Oh, on the back, the organizational charts that are in the back of your packets.
Oh, okay, that's what.
If, yes.
So additionally to the 5 direct reports to the director, there are currently 44 campus supervisor positions that report directly to the director, jointly with the building principals for the sites that they serve, and 15 school crossing guards. There are currently 24 nurses that report to the nurse supervisor and 1 COVID-19 point of contact. The Safety Services and Emergency Medical Services Department is responsible for the following duties: security for all campuses and special events, maintenance of intrusion alarms, maintenance and operation of the district-wide camera system, and that camera system consists of over 1,000 cameras across 15 sites. Yes, ma'am. Badging and credentialing of personnel, oversight and training for district-wide crisis plans, district-wide de-escalation and restraint training, training of campus supervisors, providing support and recommendation to principals regarding everyday safety concerns, investigations as assigned by the superintendent, providing basic health care needs for students and staff, monitoring and oversight of protocols related to infectious diseases, maintenance and training for visitor and volunteer management systems, maintenance and training of emergency alert technology, and collaboration with emergency services providers such as the North Little Rock Police Department, Fire Department, and MIMS. And during the assessment, a consistent theme was found throughout the district was a need for additional training and comprehension of protocols related to safety. The analysis concludes that these are very valid concerns. Upon presenting the findings to Dr. Paluski as far as the assessment, several recommendations were obvious that needed to occur throughout the district as they pertain to safety. On page 4, as I go through the positions that are recommended, there is, as Dr. Paluski was saying, a pullout in your handout of the organizational chart, current chart, and the proposed positions organizational chart. And so, to adequately address the safety concerns of the district, it is recommended that the following positions are added to assist with technology, supervision, and general safety needs. And at this time, I'm going to go to help visualize the positions as I go through them. I'm going to go to page 11, which is the organizational chart that you have as a pullout. And so, at the top of the chart, you have the Director of Safety Services. To the immediate right would be the Safety IT Manager, the first position that is proposed. The Safety IT Manager would be responsible for oversight, supervision, maintenance, and all operational technology associated with the school safety and coordination of all matters related to any outside vendors dealing with operational technology. The IT manager would be responsible for all the cameras, the alarm systems, the badging systems, as well as visitor and volunteer management, and all the other technology that goes along with that for the district. As I stated earlier, there are over 1,000 cameras in the systems in the district. There are currently, daily requests as far as badging, credentialing requests, alarms, camera positionings that need to be handled. And so up under the safety IT manager position, you see safety systems technician. That position is recommended to assist the safety IT manager in the daily handling and maintenance of all of the operational technology that is related to safety throughout the district. So those two positions are, the safety IT manager position is a reorganized position. On the current organizational chart, that is a safety systems administrator. And so once I started looking at the responsibilities of the safety system administrator, it was obvious that additional duties and responsibilities needed to be added. And so that position evolved into the safety IT manager. Up under the safety IT manager also is a crisis intervention technician. As I conducted the assessment of safety throughout the district, currently each building administrator is responsible for creating a crisis plan for their building. As I looked at the crisis plans, the majority of them are different. The template is different. A lot of the terminology is different from building to building. And that does not coincide with best practices as far as safety. We have some staff that work in one building on certain days, and they may work in a different building on other days. And as you transition from different buildings in the district, the terminology as far as what a lockdown is or other drills that we have should be consistent so that it means the same no matter what site you're working at. And so the crisis intervention technician would be responsible for designing the crisis plan for each location. They would be responsible for updating, maintaining those plans, and then actually going out to the site and training with the staff as far as what they need to do in a crisis situation to implement the plans and do that with confidence and competence. And right now, as I conducted the assessment, there are a lot of staff and security personnel that are not absolutely certain what needs to happen in a crisis situation. So that crisis technician, intervention technician will be responsible for creating those plans and then training on those plans and then making sure that those plans are updated, as well as reunification sites for each location. I've spoken about reunification sites previously with some of the technology, Raptor technology that the board has approved to purchase. That's important in case we are ever unfortunate enough to have to relocate an entire campus to different locations. We have to have plans in place ahead of time as far as how logistically we will make that happen. The crisis intervention technician will be responsible for creating those plans, making sure we have contacts, updated contacts, and that if we have to relocate, we have all of the logistical means to do that and do it quickly and efficiently. And so those three positions would comprise what would be the technology component of the safety department. And that would greatly help to enhance the overall safety of the entire district. One thing that as far as the safety IT manager, and I talked about over 1,000 cameras in the district. Currently, we have a lot of technology that has capability and functionality that the district is not taking full advantage of. And so having a technology team dedicated to safety and security will help us to better utilize what we already have, what is already paid for, that's just sitting dormant waiting on someone to come along and actually operate some of the technology. And it definitely will help to keep the district safe. So
And our new technology.
And as well as the new technology that is en route, dealing with Raptor and Open Gate, our weapons detection system. So this will definitely, when I came before the board with the recommendation for the Raptor technology, the question was, are we going to train with that technology? This team, this technology team, will ensure that not only will we implement and maintain technology throughout the district, but we also have people that are there to go out and train and make sure everybody is confident and capable of utilizing that technology when it needs to be utilized. Next, to the safety IT manager is a security captain. Currently, as I stated previously, there are 44 campus supervisors and 15 school crossing guards that report directly to the director jointly with the building principals that for the sites that they serve. This plan, and keeping in line with best practices for security nationally, there needs to be levels of supervision implemented in the district. That's good to make sure that the people that are carrying out security throughout the district have the resources and the support that they need, as well as a means to make sure they're held accountable for providing the safety and the duties and responsibilities that we are tasking them with doing. So to do that, we have to implement some levels of supervision throughout the district that is non-existent currently. So the security captain would be, so say, the manager over the security officers. He would be second in command to the director and responsible for the daily security needs throughout the district. Directly up under the security captain, there is a position for a commissioned school security officer. It's recommended that we have 11 commissioned school security officers. Commissioned school security officers are armed security guards. It's recommended that we have 11 because we will have one armed security officer at each of the elementary schools, one at Pikeview, Pikeview Early Childhood Center. Currently, there is no security at the Pikeview Center, and then there will be one armed security guard at the academy. The reason that I would recommend that we have an armed security officer at the elementary schools is because at the elementary level, due to the size of the students and the nature of distractions inside the building administrator and staff are usually able to successfully deal with those without the need for security intervention. And so at the elementary level, the major concern as far as safety are threats from the outside. And so that would provide an armed presence at each of the elementary schools to protect the staff and the students from any threats that might come against the building from the outside. That is in line with recommendations nationally from school safety proponents. And then it also, excuse me, as I said, would also have one armed security guard at the academy. Next to that commissioned school security officer, there are two positions for a security sergeant. That's pretty much the first line supervisor for our security officers. There are two recommended. One would be in charge of the, or assigned to the 7th and 8th grade campus, the 6th grade campus, and responsible for the academy. And then there will be one security sergeant or supervisor assigned to the high school. I think that that's desperately needed. Those are the two largest campuses in the district, and we need more oversight as far as to ensure that safety and security is carried out the way that and in accordance to protocol for those campuses. And so that's another layer of supervision that will be directly applied to those two campuses. Underneath that, I have security officers for the 7th and 8th grade campus and security officers for the high school campus. These security officers will still be unarmed security personnel. The reason I would recommend that we stay with the unarmed security personnel at the middle school, the 6th grade campus, and the high school campus is because at those campuses, the students are larger, and not only do we have to be concerned as far as safety with threats from the outside, we have to be concerned with disturbances and fights and disruptions on the inside of the building. And because of the size of the students, security often are going to have to be involved in helping to quell those disturbances and bring order back to the building. We definitely want to be careful about introducing a firearm into that environment, and then we take a situation that is not ideal perfect, but and we make it worse because now we've introduced a weapon. So we will continue to have unarmed security personnel, 6th grade, 7th and 8th grade campus, and the high school, and we will continue to rely upon our partnership with the North Little Rock Police Department to provide armed school resource officers for the armed component of those campuses, as we have done in the past. This plan also continues to utilize the crossing guard positions as we have in the past, that will be supervised by the security captain. The rest of the organizational chart remains as it has been in the past, as far as the part-time internal affairs investigator and the organization of our nursing program. And so now I'm going to go back to the actual presentation, page 5. In addition to the recommended positions, the superintendent would also make the following changes under this plan. We changed the name from the Safety, Security, and Emergency Medical Services Department to the Safety Services Department. We would be issuing new uniforms to all safety services personnel, a uniform that is definitely professional and representative of the school district. We will update the memorandum of understanding with the North Little Rock Police Department and specify the roles and responsibilities of both the school resource officers and the expectations from the school district. We require all security officers to obtain certification through the state of Arkansas and adjust the salary scale for the security officers to reflect the additional mandated certification and job requirements. That is something that has not been done previously, as far as our security officers being certified through the state of Arkansas.
Say that again.
Previously, our security officers, and this is a mandate by the state of Arkansas, that number one, that our safety and security department is recognized as a security company by the state of Arkansas, and then these officers have to be credentialed through the state of Arkansas as commissioned security officers. So now all of our campus supervisors have gone through that credentialing process, and we are in the process of moving forward as mandated by state law. It's also recommended that we adopt a district-wide policy that security officers will not be reassigned from their security assignments and utilize as classroom monitors. Removing security officers from their assigned duties and responsibilities diminishes the overall safety, physical safety for the entire campus. And this is a problem that has been consistent previously, that we hopefully will not have going forward. We will continue to utilize school climate surveys across the campuses and develop an action plan based on the findings at each campus, and enhance behavioral threat assessments at each campus. And that's something that's really big across the nation right now, as most school districts are looking at what they can do to enhance safety in the public schools. And it's also recommended that we utilize available safety systems to better manage visitors and various on the various campuses, volunteers, and that's something that we have already taken action on with the purchase of the Raptor technology. And then technology to assist with bullying incidents. The district has purchased a Stop It app, and that will be implemented at the beginning of the new school year, which is an app that's designed to allow students to report incidents anonymously, and it also provides counseling for students that might need it as far as suicide prevention and bullying incidents, and that service is provided 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There will be people available that any student or their family members can call and have access to those services. So realigning the Safety, Security, and Emergency Medical Services Department and adding the proposed positions will reduce liability, enhance performance and accountability, and make the district more compliant with the National Incident Management Systems models. And with that, we will move to the position crosswalk as far as the new positions are concerned.
Thank you, Chief. We've presented our reorganization plans in phase one. We want to provide you and the public as well, which is our position crosswalk. This is where you see where the current title is. The FTE allocated the number of positions, kind of going from the current allocation to the future allocation, number of positions, funding source, level, and who it reports to. So as Chief mentioned, the first one was the school safety administrator. Again, not going to read all that to you about the FTE, but that position then moves the reorganized to safety IT manager. The second position there in the column is the safety systems technology. Technician rather. This would be a new position. This would need to be funded out of operating. All of these are funded out of operating. Again, it's a district-wide level and then reports to the system IT manager. Number three, this is a new position as well. This is a crisis intervention technician. Again, not going to read that to you. You can see where it didn't exist in blue, but it does exist or it is proposed to exist. In 4 is the security captain. Again, being proposed, that's a new position. The security sergeant is a new position. And you'll see in 6, in order to get to reorganizing our school district to commission security officers and security officers, the proposal is to take our current campus supervisors as they currently exist and reorganize those positions, those 11 campus supervisors positions from campus supervisors to commissioned officers. And you'll see in that is a reorganization proposal that is operating. In 7, you see that as well, the 30.75 campus supervisors, because we both have full-time and we have part-time, those would be reorganized into the security officers, the unarmed component, as Chief was talking about, and then those will be reorganized under operating. So in this proposal, similar as I've recommended before, these positions would be recommending contract non-renewals, and all of those positions that would end effectively June 2023. All of our campus supervisors are currently under contract and will remain under contract for this next fiscal year. Let me say that again. All of our campus supervisors that are currently under contract will remain under contract until June 30th of 2023. The same process is applied when we've done this with licensed personnel as well. We will, if this plan is approved, and I'll talk about the process in that in a second, all of these individuals will receive a letter. They're being contract non-renewed by 2023, and they will have a right, which is a little bit different, which is in the Employee Fair Hearing Act. They would have an opportunity, just like we did with license, to be able to come before the Board of Education and have a hearing. What we will do in this process, though, tonight we'll be asking for my recommendation of this proposal, which is phase 1, action to approve. From here, we'll have 10 days in which we will go in front of the CPPC, and we'll have an opportunity to present this to that organization, let them ask any questions that they want. They will have an opportunity to vote on it, because we will share with you this is a change in policy, because with the new job titles there are new contract or new salary schedules that would need to be in place in order to put the structure in place. After the 10-day period, we would come back to you with that feedback as well, and then the Board of Education would vote on it a second time for final approval. With the board's final approval in this, what we would do in good faith is meet with every single campus supervisor individually to be able to answer any questions that they have as it relates to the process, job availability. Also, you'll see in your packet that Chief has put forward, similar to what we've done before, are detailed job descriptions in all the new positions or the reorganized positions. In the back of your packet, you will also see a salary schedule, a proposed salary schedule for all of the positions that are forward. Now, how much is it going to cost? All of this is out of operating, and in order to implement the plan as it's proposed, we're proposing it has to come in 2 phases. We know that school's getting ready to start, so our proposal is items 1 through 6. So that includes, as Chief mentioned, the technology component and the beginning of the supervisory security component as well, which is items 1 through 6, all the way from the safety IT manager all the way to the commissioned officers. That would cost just over $500,000. That would be phase 1. As we reorganize the campus supervisors, going into the following school year, that would be $220,000 with a grand total implementation of just over $700,000. Number 1, this would have to come from the operating budget. Here's some good news. 3-quarter ADM is up, and if you remember when we came to you about promising raises and salary increases for all of our employees, one of the things that we said that we needed to do would be to decrease the operating budget or find $500,000 in order to continue those pay raises. Since ADM is up, and speaking with Mr. Brown, we feel pretty confident with that enrollment that we're able to sustain that. However, this way we'd still have to go back and find $500,000 or $750,000 over 2 years. I promise you, as the superintendent, we will come back to you and show you exactly where we reduce the operating budget. We're also looking at, as we mentioned before, solar, and as well as redoing all of our lights in roughly LED, in meeting with Mr. Brown and Mr. Hatch. That could be an immediate savings of about $1.5 roughly million. There could be savings that we could put towards the investment in advancing our safety and security plan. The other thing that this plan does in the safety and security department does allow for a career ladder. Currently, there is no career ladder with our campus supervisors, so it gives folks an opportunity if they want to aspire to the next level of leadership and they want to get advanced training, there would be opportunities for them. That currently doesn't exist within the current structure. And the last thing, and we'll kind of close it out with this, to not to go over, and this all will be made to the public after this, is one of the things that I promised to you that we've talked about that is in my goals. Chief and I will launch a safety task force. One of the things that I will ask of the board is to make a recommendation from the school board zones that you represent that you would like to see serve on this task force. So we want to have not only parents or whoever you want to represent that represent each one of our zones, but I think it's important that we have a voice of everyone that's in our school system. We will also have student voice. Chief and I have been talking about that. That's very important to be a part of this, as well as local agencies, and of course the North Little Rock Police Department will be a key asset to that as well. The job descriptions are in there. I don't know if you want us to go through that, but I believe that will be made clear to the public. If you want us to go touch on that publicly, we'll do that. If not, we'll be happy to take any questions at this time.
Ms. West?
Ms. West?
Yes, great presentation on all of it, and I am all for the safety and security of our students and personnel also. So we made employees that will be impacted aware that they can reapply for their jobs and all of that, correct?
Correct. Today, Mr. Smith in our HR department had made contact individually with most. Some he had to leave a message, but we did contact all of them that we were able to contact today to give them a heads up that this was being proposed this evening. We will also again request individual meetings with each one of them so we can answer their individual questions. Everybody has a different, situation, or we just want to make sure that all of their questions are answered.
So say by chance, if you go through and you can obtain a actual, where you can carry a firearm, and will that person be given an opportunity to maybe transfer, or is that something that instead of maybe putting them out of the district, maybe go ahead and look at doing maybe a transfer some kind of way?
Sure, just like we did with the licensed personnel. So they would have the opportunity to apply for any job in which the school system in which they are qualified for. It's the same thing when we did the last reorganization. They had the opportunity to apply for a transfer, i.e. apply for those jobs that are that they would qualify for. But to your answer, or to your other comment, which is part of this reorganization, as we've learned with the being out of compliance, there is a next level, a higher level of a background check that would be required. But you may have passed a regular background check, and absolutely, and those would be qualified for any jobs in which they meet the qualifications for.
And just to make that, make sure that our public knows too that yes, there are two different type of background checks. You can kind of do a surface one, and it's fine, and then you can do a more in-depth one, and that may not be what would necessarily fit for this, but you can definitely apply for something else.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I think that's all that I had.
Ms. Wonkum?
So good
She
job
has a
on.
sheet, a full sheet.
We're not shocked. Good job on hitting on the security officer, the background, the difference between the soft hit, if you will, and the hard hit, like a credit. Job descriptions are well written, so thank you on that. I'm also hearing, so we're going to be compliant with the state law now going forward with this. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, as
Oh,
far
that's
as
amazing.
making sure that
Yeah.
the security officers are credentialed.
That's amazing. Love that. Love it when we apply the law and stay above board. So here's where I'm going to give you an out. Okay, so I'm going to ask two questions, and then you can say, I do not feel comfortable doing that because of security, safety, whatever it may be, okay? Just for the public to hear these questions. So when you say an armed police officer or an armed guard, do you mean someone with like a long rifle in front of our schools? Or are you thinking of just a normal, everyday Joe police officer with a gun on their head? And again, you don't have to answer. It's just something that I'm thinking. Because I'm thinking optics.
Well-
I'm a new person coming into this school district, and I see an armed officer with a long rifle. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what just happened? So,
Just for clarity for the listening audience, because I don't want to confuse an armed police officer with an armed security officer. The armed security officers, which are listed as commissioned school security officers in the report, would have handguns that would be approved by the district along with the ammunition that goes with that. They will also have to go through additional training that's mandated by the state of Arkansas, and that's an annual certification that they have to maintain in order to carry that firearm. Additionally, it's not required by the state, but it's within best practices, and it's included in the job descriptions that the individual selected to be armed security officers in our school will have to pass a psychological exam, also conditional upon being employed.
well done.
And that is different from a police officer who traditionally or regularly will have a sidearm on their side, but they do have access to long rifles and weapons when needed.
Right. Thank you for that clarification. That's where I was heading, so good job. See, we're pretty good at charades. All right, so thinking back on Texas, the incident of what happened, and again, you have an out here. So will the armed security guard, will they stay stationary? Will they have access to the campus? Is this something that they're going to stay in their vehicle, or will they be roaming? So again, security purposes, you have an out.
Well, they definitely will not be staying in their vehicle. They will be
Inside the building.
The protocol will be, we want majority of the time to have an armed presence at the front door. At all of the schools, especially when we get the technology part in place, we will be limiting the entrances into the schools. And so, which is definitely needed. And so we definitely want at the entry point where the majority of people will be coming, we want an armed presence there the majority of the time. And that is within best practices nationally also for safety in the schools. And so, but we don't want to, we don't want to limit that officer to just being at the front door. It may be an opportunity, necessary if the students are on the playground to go to monitor that area. So they definitely will move around. The most important thing is that any campus you go to, you should see security somewhere. You should not be at a campus long without knowing that there's some type of security on the campus. And so high visibility is definitely what we're going to be shooting for.
Very good, thank you.
I'm done. Chief Finks,
Yes, ma'am.
number one, so the teachers can hear this. Adopt a district-wide policy restricting security officers from being reassigned from their duties and going into the classrooms to be substitute teachers. That is over in your report.
Yes, ma'am. It's my
Correct.
recommendation that we have a district-wide policy restricting security personnel from being pulled from their post to monitor classrooms. When we do that, you diminish the entire physical security of that campus. And, the unfortunate incident that happened recently in Texas, you see what happens with just one unsecured entryway into a building. It can be devastating. And so it doesn't do any good to have security if they're not at their post and carry out the security functions that we, have asked them to do.
Another question, and I know that you have a good staff here. At their posts, most of the times when you walk into buildings, they are sitting down somewhere. Would this be a sit-in? A roam, you know what I mean?
I-
Be
I-
roaming
Talk
the
around.
building.
I totally understand. That's where, in the plan, I mentioned that there are no levels of supervision currently.
Okay.
That's why there will be a supervisor assigned to the high school, one assigned to the middle school and the sixth grade campus, and then the captain would oversee the elementary schools also, along with myself. We have to train our security officers. We have to provide them with the resources that they need to do their job. We have to support them, but then at the end of the day, we have to hold them accountable for doing the job that we're paying them to do. And so the levels of supervision will make sure that everybody is not just having a sit-in, but actually performing the security functions that they're paid to do.
Okay, one other question. This is dealing with your technology. When we get ready to walk into the auditorium, do we have outside cameras that monitor as people go in and out on all of our entrances outside?
I'm fairly certain with it, 99% of them we do. I don't want to say all because there may be one that I'm unaware of, but we do have, we've got over 1,000 cameras throughout the district. And so most of the entryways, we do have a camera, and that goes back to having someone dedicated to just overseeing the technology for the district. Our camera system has functionality that is not being tapped into. Currently, we're probably using about 33% of the functionality of our camera system, the alarm systems, and other technology throughout the district. We do have current technology that if a door is propped open for, over a few seconds, that we could have, text messages or a lot of things that could be done to alert us that, hey, we have a problem. And a lot of that technology is not being utilized currently. And so that's where the technology component of the safety department will come in and help to make sure as far as the cameras at all of the entryways. And not only do we have them, but we have someone monitoring the cameras, and we are connecting that to the physical security at each location when we have an issue that we need to address.
Okay, and I guess that was, you told me about the outside. Oh, will we be utilizing those, the technology that we had bought and never been used in the district for security? These were security things we bought 2 years ago and never used. And I'm asking you, with President's Day, are you still able to use those, or are they functional, or maybe you haven't had the opportunity to look at it, but I know it wasn't used.
Which technology?
The metal detectors?
Oh, the
What
metal
things we
detectors?
bought?
Yeah.
Metal detectors.
Oh, the metal detectors.
Well, as you know, the district just purchased new weapon detection systems for the high school. There are some walk-through metal detectors at the high school that will be repositioned at the middle school and the academy, so
Okay.
that we have better safety measures at all three of those campuses.
Okay, I know that, but and the only question I asked you was that we bought 2 years ago and spent the money for. Have you been able to assess that and see if it's still usable?
Yes, ma'am, I have. It is usable. It just has not been utilized as much as it should have.
No, it wasn't utilized. You don't have to think, I know. Okay. But I just wanted to know, if you're trying to use everything that we got to make the safety of all of our schools in
Yes, ma'am,
elementary.
absolutely. As we get new technology, and if the open gate, when I came before the board with the open gate, I mentioned that we wanted to start with the high school as a pilot and make sure that, that it functions the way we would like for it to, and everything is worked properly there. And then we would possibly want to maybe look at taking that technology to other campuses. And so as we bring new technology into one campus, we definitely want to repurpose the usable technology there at the other campuses to help enhance safety throughout the district.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Thanks, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now I'm gonna ask you one more question now. This material
She
we
had a
just
sheet.
bought from you, this is like when you're going into the courthouse. Will you actually have the time to let those students walk through to make sure that their purses and everything are put over to the side or to run through? Do you understand?
I do, and the thing about the technology that was just purchased by the district, and that was important to me as I was looking at recommendations for the technology. If we don't use it every day, it's really not. We don't want to hit and miss. We want technology that every day we can say that there are no weapons getting on campus. And so it's not like the traditional walk-through metal detectors where you have to take everything out of your pockets. We have to look through purses and that type of thing. The only thing that the students will have to do is if they have a Chromebook or a laptop, they will have to take that out and place it on a table, and then they walk through. The technology does not require them to empty their pockets or anything else, which means that we can quickly get all students and staff in and out of the building and utilize that technology every day.
Very good report, Mr. Finkston. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We didn't discuss this, but, and I know the SROs do not work for the school district, but how do they fit on this organizational chart? Do they just report directly to you? I mean, you coordinate with you, or do they interact some with the security sergeants, or how do they fit in this?
Well, actually, and we are working on updating the MOU with the North Little Rock Police Department, but the school resource officers have their own chain of command through the police department. And we are very fortunate that we have a good partnership, and we do coordinate on, safety measures throughout the department, but their chain of command is through the North Little Rock Police Department. And so we have, in enhancing security and thinking about the investment of the district, the North Little Rock Police Department also has committed to an investment, an additional investment in the safety of the school district. Currently, we have 5 school resource officers and a supervisor. That supervisor is assigned to the high school. And so we have received a commitment from the police department to have an additional school resource officer so that the sergeant is not just at the high school, but he's able to move around more freely throughout the district and make sure that, safety concerns are addressed throughout the district more, as they come about. And so with the school resource officers, we will have an armed component at the high school, the middle school, and then we have officers that rotate amongst the elementary schools. And that will continue even with the armed security guard at each elementary campus, because sometimes there is still a need for a sworn officer presence for whatever the situation may be.
Thank
Ms.
you.
McLean?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, just to go a little further on the SRO, the ones that we have in the district currently, they do carry a firearm, correct?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
So parents already know that we have these officers on campus with a firearm. So when they hear Ms. Wonkum, that we're gonna have a security officer on a commissioned school security officer. It's really not any different than having the SRO.
I'm not gonna say that it's no different, but there is great concern and it's a very stringent process on the selection of people, of the security officers that will be armed. The preference, and it's actually in the job description, we would definitely seek people that have prior law enforcement experience, that have gone through law enforcement training, to be armed security officers in the school. And it's not unique to, it's not new to Central Arkansas. The Bryant School District and the Jacksonville North Pulaski School District all have armed security officers currently on their employed with the district.
So our parents hopefully will not be alarmed that suddenly we're gonna have a commissioned school security officer that has a handgun, because we already have had police from the North Little Rock Police Department that have been on our campuses.
Yes, ma'am. Correct. Hopefully no one will be alarmed, and they will know that we are taking great measures to ensure that the people that are carrying weapons are credentialed and very capable of keeping the campuses safe.
Hopefully they'll feel a lot better about their children being in these schools, right?
Yes, ma'am. And it is also a recommendation both from the Arkansas School Safety Commission and national organization that there be an armed presence at each campus.
Okay. Those 1,000 cameras, I don't know when those were purchased. I don't know if they were installed when the new schools were built, when the elementary schools were built and the high school was built. So I would say, are the 1,000 cameras that we have, are they up to date so that you can see clearly, or they're not fuzzy? And then I would ask about the middle school, if they have updated cameras, because that campus didn't get any new buildings.
Well, and in my assessment, the cameras have been acquired piecemeal throughout the years. So some are older, some are newer, and that's at every location. As we have problems with cameras and they have to be replaced, so one of the older buildings might have, a few newer cameras simply because some had to be replaced. But we have a contract with the vendor that as the technology becomes, because technology, becomes outdated and needs to be upgraded. So as the needs arise, those cameras are replaced. And it's been I couldn't tell you, this assessment is 4.5 months in the making, but I know it has been a number of years, but I don't have that number as far as just how old and what the range would be as far as the cameras.
Right, some of them may be high definition pictures, and
some of them,
That's right.
the newer ones, we are as we purchase new technology, we want to get the latest technology available. But then we also want to make sure that it's going to work and function with what we already have in place, so that we're not in a position where we are trying to replace the entire system at one time. And so we do work with the vendor to make sure that we are staying abreast with the latest technology as best as possible, and making sure that it's working with what we have in place.
So, budget-wise, where in the budget is there money to replace cameras?
Sure, so that comes out of our operating budget. So anything, and the side step I wanted to take to that is to your question and Chief's response. I think this is more of a rationale, of a really good real-world example of why we need the crisis intervention tech, because it's not only that they're going to go and make sure that all of our schools have the updated safety plan, but Chief's expectation is that they're going to assess each building and be able to walk that building and talk to teachers and administrators. Where do they have concerns? Where are their camera concerns? And then once we get that assessment where we need to maybe phase in and upgrade and integrate, we would come with a plan before the board to be able to do that.
I love that. Love it. It's obvious that for 4.5 months you have been very busy. And this is a wonderful, wonderful plan that I see in front of me. And I think all parents should be very happy with that being such a high concern for all of them and all our employees and everybody here on this board. I commend you for this plan. And I know that it's still kind of evolving too, but I love the structure of it, and I'm very happy.
Thank you.
Mr. Steele.
Don't clap,
Thank you.
Mr. Finks.
Thank you, and thank you for your as well your work with this plan. You mentioned well, before we go there, just to backtrack on a couple things that's been mentioned already. One is about the armed officers. We know that our armed police officers now not only carry guns but other things. What else will they carry? Will they have tasers?
At this point, there is no plan for tasers. That is something that definitely in the future we probably would want to explore. Taser is a less lethal weapon, so that you know, in certain situations you have an option. However, you know, it's going to be highly stressed also that the armed security officers are not law enforcement officers. They're not there to, you know, to make arrests. They're there for when there is an immediate life-threatening threat against the campus. And so we do want to, you know, train and equip with the latest technology as that becomes available. But at this point, tasers are not on the table for that. One thing as far as equipment, though, for the commissioned school security officers as well as the unarmed security officers, we are having Stop the Bleed training for all of the supervisors this summer, and we have made provisions to make sure all of them have tourniquets that they will carry with them and keep with them to use in situations where they could possibly help save a life. So they will have that tool, all of the security.
What about handcuffs?
There's no plan for handcuffs at this point, but that is another option that going forward we might explore.
With your, okay. Did you do?
No, I was just going to say about de-escalation training.
Yeah, would be a part of that. A way to.
Right, we do have enhanced de-escalation training that all of our security personnel will be going through this summer. We just switched to a new de-escalation and restraint technique, which is CRT, and so they will all receive that training before school starts.
I think it's a forward step in the right direction. We still have a lot of work to do. In your assessment, your 4-month assessment, what was your evaluation of, well, let me put it this way. In your professional opinion, why do you feel we haven't had a major incident in North Little Rock School District thus far?
Well,
I was going to say, I could answer that.
you know, my 34
God.
years of experience
That's what I
in law
said.
enforcement.
Well, let me ask you this. How do you feel, since we haven't had a major incident, how do you feel about the performance of the campus supervisors?
I think that we have some very dedicated, I have met some very dedicated and professional security personnel as I conducted the assessment with administrators, students, and staff. I also spoke with the security personnel, and a lot of the things that I'm recommending, a lot of them brought, that was their suggestion. You know,
So
that
they've
we
helped
look
with the
at-
process and
they
with your assessment over the last 4 months.
Yes, and they, such as new uniforms, you know, that are more professional and that present a more command presence for security. You know, some of these things, the current security personnel are aware of, and they have just been waiting on the opportunity, to see some of these things come to fruition.
Right. I think they played an important role. They're very, like you said, dedicated. How important do you feel it is to have personnel who know the students, know them by name, who can identify different attitudes and so forth with the kids?
I think that is very important. That would be definitely a part of our selection process on who is providing security in the schools. The safety of our schools, and my background is law enforcement, and so I make the connection between security and law enforcement. In law enforcement, traditionally, historically, you measure success, or success was measured by arrest. You know, if you have a problem with burglaries and you go out and you make a lot of burglary arrests, then you consider that success. Well, it's a new era. And so, and the same thing is with security in the school. You cannot measure success by the amount of discipline or the amount of rest, or, success is measured by a decrease in incidents. If security personnel are doing their job and doing it the way we expect them to, they have built a rapport with the students. The more challenging the student, the more interaction they should have, so that they know them by name. They know when they can tell when they're having a bad day, when they may be agitated or irritated for whatever reason, and they're able to, as incidents come about, go to that student, call them by name, and say, hey, what's going on? Let's talk about it. And then you de-escalate situations before you get to the point where you have to use force or involve school administration or, unfortunately, law enforcement. And so when security personnel are doing that, when they have a heart to work with the students, then we will see success as far as a decrease in incidents in the school overall. And that's a very important part of the selection process on who's selected to work safety and security in the schools.
So, Dr. Paluski,
Yes, sir.
these individuals, and I'm very concerned. I'm all with safety and security. I don't want there to be any unnecessary employment casualties that come out of this. With people who've been very dedicated and worked very hard with this school district, are you considering any transfers of like positions that are similar to what they're doing now?
Good question, Mr. Steele. So all the individuals, so we're going to follow the same process we did as we did in the last organization. So all the individuals that would be impacted would have the opportunity to apply for a transfer. And they would have the opportunity to apply for any position, like position. Bottom line is the position they are qualified to be able to do. Right. And that's why what we want to be able to do, what I promise you and our employees is, because we have not only a long time here, but it's just the right thing to do to meet with these.
I don't mean to interrupt you. You said like we did in our last what?
So in our last reorganization that we did back in March, we're following that same process. So the individuals will be notified. The individuals have a right to a hearing. They have 30 days to be able to apply for that. We'll also meet with those individually to be able to answer their individual questions and talk about options and talk about the job descriptions, talk about the qualifications. There may be some employees as they look at this and say, hey, I have time to get some training that makes me even more qualified for a position. So that's what we want to be able to do. We have great employees, as you mentioned, that have worked 27 or 30 years, but we also want to make sure that we have the right people in the right place to do the reorganized work.
And get the right training.
And get the right training, absolutely, absolutely. And the one comment that you asked, Chief, is, how come we haven't had anything happen? And I will say, because we're lucky. And I've said this from day one, it's too loose. Our safety and security has been too loose for too long. And somebody's going to get hurt if we don't do something immediately, and I believe these are the right steps that we all agree are the right thing to keep everybody safe. The bottom line is you can't be 100% safe. It's next to impossible, but you can do the right things to put the right structure in place to, as Chief would always say, our safety and security is only as good as our weakest link. So if we prop doors open, that's not safety and security. That's, if we don't have, credentialing that is appropriate, that's an issue. If we have, access to buildings that we shouldn't have access to, and I talk about that is because it's the sense of urgency, I think we all recognize, and if it's one thing we've heard from our community, as you've said it as well, everybody is concerned about safety and security.
Amen.
Right. And there's been some people working very hard.
And some people, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Now, the last, I think my last question, the last issue that I want to touch on, the last reorganization, wasn't that predicated because of the low test scores that we received and low performance? Is that what the driving, motivating factor?
Well, I mean, there's lots of things in that reorganization. One is, yes, that's a data point used, all the way back from the 100-day plan about the current state of reality. And the whole premise of that is a different service delivery model that adds more support to school principals, and it adds more support to classroom teachers to improve teaching and learning. That is the essence of that. What this plan also does, as Chief talked about, right now the crisis plans are put on the principal. They don't have the technologies, the technical skill to be able to do that. The crisis intervention, that's something we can take off a principal that can help them more focus on the teaching and learning and meeting the needs of the, and that's just a good example of how we're supporting a principal, but in a different way.
And the timetable of this is what?
So the timetable of this, if the board approves it tonight, we have a tentative meeting with the CPPC on Monday. After that, I would urge the board if we could have a special meeting next week and to be able to vote on this if it's possible. Because of the sense of urgency and the timeline, we're about 65 days until we open school. And so to do phase 1 through 6, that's got to get time to post the jobs, interview, get people, get training, and those kinds of things in order to open schools successfully. That would be phase 1.
That gave me another question. So what's the time period when it goes to the committee?
So they have a total of 10 days.
10 days.
Yes. They have a total of 10 days. It goes to them for 10 days.
How can we meet next week? So we have to wait till after the 10 days?
No. They have up to 10 days in order to meet with us to be able to vote on the proposal. And so they have a window of time. And so we've been in contact with the CPPC leadership, and we have a tentative meeting on Monday. We've shared, the sense of urgency. So we will meet with them Wednesday. I don't know if that's face-to-face, Mr. Smith, or virtual.
I believe it's virtual.
It's a virtual. And then, so because it's they will have to vote on it because there is a salary schedule that is proposed, a new salary schedule. So they will have to vote on that. And certainly they will have an opportunity to come and express to the board, on how they feel about the plan. They will have that opportunity, but we'll bring that back to you.
Guess that's not what I'm looking for. Day 1 of school, how much of this will be?
Well, that's going to be contingent.
What could we tell parents? Okay, starting day 1, we're going to have armed security at every elementary school.
Okay, so I guess to cut to the chase, that's all going to depend on the board taking action on this, hopefully next week. Once that happens, we can advertise the jobs. Our goal is to have items 1 through 6. So the technology component, we will have that set up, the new technology ready to go. And then really the command structure, the captain, the sergeants, and the CSSOs in place by school starts. The only thing that's not going to be in place are the security officers, because those positions are current campus supervisors. So this year would look like a little bit of a hybrid, and then next year.
Yeah, just as long as we know, that's
yes,
fine.
And I think the immediate thing that our public will see with the new uniforms is the high visibility that you'll be able to be at any campus and see very visibly. And we'll do publications out to our constituents, let them know what the uniform looks like, let them know what the new technology is going to look like. We have a whole communication rollout that we want to do to make sure families know, for students to know how to walk through Open Gate and what they have to not walk through with, those kinds of things.
And Mr. Finks, you've already been doing some training, right? With some of your staff?
We have, all of the staff have gone through, they are now credentialed through the state police as as security officers, and it was 8 hours of training that went along with that. So some of the training has already taken place, and then we have a lot more training that they will receive prior to the start of the next school year.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
I haven't,
can we call for the question?
I haven't asked my question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Madam Chair, you've been
I
so
always
good
go
to-
for, because I save mine for last to make sure.
And
that-
I have one more whenever you get through. I thought about something while they were talking.
Okay.
My bad.
Just for clarity, the 10-day for the CPPC,
Yes, ma'am.
they're meeting on Monday.
Yes.
So are they meeting on Monday and voting and approving
Yes.
on Monday? So that's how we can possibly meet next week?
Correct. So they have up to 10 days to hear the proposal and vote on it.
But
One-
it just happened, they have 10 days, but what you're telling us is that they have chosen to meet on Monday.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They've have been more than willing to work with us and say they understand the sense of urgency. Hey, let's meet on Monday.
Okay.
Let's have our conversation and we'll take our vote. But I can't bring your second vote on this until they first have the opportunity to weigh in and vote.
Gotcha.
And as soon as that happens, I will let you know to see if it's feasible to have a special board meeting next week just on this topic.
Makes sense. So if I'm hearing correctly, come August, all of the current campus supervisors basically will be security officers?
No, they will be campus
They're gonna stay-
supervisors, correct.
okay.
They're under
Thank you.
contract, yep.
To 2020.
So that's what we talk about. We're going to be in a hybrid. That's kind of phase 2. So we would be all the campus supervisors. Now they would certainly under chief's leadership and get some more training, so forth, and expectations into this school year.
Gotcha. Just doing for clarity.
Sure.
You said something about if we approve it, starting the process of posting, so we're looking at, in August, we would possibly have the security sergeant, the security captains. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, as soon as it's approved by you, we will put those positions, because those are new positions. They're not, there's nobody in those positions, they're brand new.
So that brings
So
up
nobody's
my-
impacted in those positions. So the IT positions, the captain, the sergeant, the CSSOs.
So my question is, that means that if we have a current campus supervisor that applies for, let's say, the security captain.
Sure.
And they get it,
Yes,
their position is now open.
correct.
So is it gonna be open as a campus supervisor or is
So
it security
great, that's a great
officer?
question. And to me, that wouldn't make any sense. If the board approves it, we would begin to start, interviewing the security officers. And that's why this year could look like more of a hybrid, because it wouldn't make any sense if that was a vacancy to post that position and they only have a job for a year. But if, like you said, absolutely. And we anticipate that there's going to be some campus supervisors that apply for those positions because they're well qualified for it. But that's what the plan would be.
Gotcha. So we'll have a little bit of both. And my last question, are we going to start implementing, I want to know what we're going to see in August. Are we going to start implementing some of the changes, like the name change and the new uniforms and no subbing in classes and stuff
So
like that?
correct. So the no subbing in classes, we're going to put that immediately into effect. We're kind of in this new uniform piece because they are still campus supervisors, but we are going to get some consistency even for our campus supervisors this year. Number one, where there's visibility is the big thing, but we're still going to be in a little bit of a hybrid. But I think that's one of the things that Chief and I talked about. How do we get the uniform piece going right away so it's clearly identifiable to anybody in the community or in the school?
Ms. Angela?
Yes, my question is gonna be real quick. Let's go back to the prop door situation, and I do believe I heard something about an alarm. The software is already available to, if an alarm, a door is propped open, an alarm will happen, and then walk me
Notification.
through what happens at that juncture if it's propped open for more than 5 minutes. I'm a teacher, I gotta run in my car real quick and get something out of there, and so I just prop the door open because I don't want to take my stuff.
No.
Okay, we're just
Do
putting,
not prop
putting it out
any
there.
doors.
Close the door.
Period.
Close the doors.
Period.
Close the door.
And I
No
know some of
propping
this is going to
doors.
be retraining behavior, but I go back to look at Uvalde. That was an open door. We simply can't have that. So if you want to go out to your, follow the proper procedures that we will put in place.
Okay, so an alarm is propped up, a prop door, if a door is propped, an alarm happens, then what happens after that? Or
That's
do we
where-
know how that component works just yet?
Well, that's where the technology component of safety works with the physical component.
Somebody at the
We
door.
have a security officer to go and secure that door, and then we will use the technology component to find out who propped the door open, and then investigate from there. to make
Okay,
sure that
and
that
so
happened
that's
again.
what I was trying to get at. It'll be further action taken at that time.
Immediately.
If a door is propping open.
Yes. And
Propped
it's-
open, not propping open. Propped open.
And that gets back to using this technology. So it might be a text message, right, to the assistant
Right.
principal and the principal, hallway 125, door open.
Door open, okay.
The security officer, the CSSO, notification where,
Okay.
so that we immediately address that if that happens. But
Okay, so
just wanna
that's
be
kinda
clear,
where I was getting at
Nobody
there.
should be propping open a door.
Right, I just want to put that out there about, further action will be
Okay.
taken if,
Thank you. I was
Yes,
just
ma'am.
saying that was
Thank you.
beautiful.
I'm gonna get her.
I have Madam, could I ask a question, Madam President?
Uh-uh.
No, you mentioned something about us, we need to vote on a policy, put something in policy. Would
So-
you have that ready for us?
So
when we
yes,
have
ma'am.
that
So
special meeting?
the superintendent is recommending the centralized reorganization, central office administration reorganization of the Safety, Security, and Emergency Medical Services Department to go to CPPC
And this is phase what?
2.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
What comes
quick
after
question.
one?
Another quick question just came in that I have to ask.
Yeah.
On the elementary level. In the mornings, they prop the door open because they have somebody standing there to greet the students when they come in. Is that gonna set off any alarms? Is that gonna be a problem?
No, that's something that we definitely want, that's where we cater our safety program to meet the needs of each campus. Obviously, in the morning when we have,
Students coming in.
Right, we want to have measures in place where we can get people into the building,
Gotcha.
quickly. And that's where, you definitely should see the security presence there so that we can have people, the door open and have people to get in quickly without inconvenience. And then, after a certain time, that's when we will go to
Gotcha.
making sure the doors are locked and the campus is secure.
Makes sense. Ready for a motion?
Okay, Madam President. I so move that we accept the central office reorganization phase 2 for safety, security, and emergency medical services.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the central office reorganization plan phase 2, and it'll be sent to, for clarity, PPC for 10-day review. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. It has been adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the disposition of minutes on May 19th, May 26th, and June 2nd.
Second.
It has been moved and probably second that we accept the disposition of minutes of prior meetings. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty. 10.4, school bus engine repairs.
Just trying to catch up some minutes here.
So, Madam President, members of our Board of Education, I'll welcome my colleagues, Mr. Brown, our Chief Financial Officer, and Mr. Jacob Smith, our Executive Director of Human Resources, to briefly discuss school bus engine repairs.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Paluski, Madam President, members of the board. So what we bring before you tonight is we have 3 special needs buses that have wheelchair lifts and air, and they need engine repairs. And so what we bring before you is a quote for those engine repairs, for them to be replaced. The need to replace those engines is much greater than replacing the buses. And so if there are any questions, we may happen to answer them for you right now.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the school bus engine repairs that was presented by Dr. Jacobs. You're a doctor, you got an attorney.
Second.
It has been moved and probably second that we accept the school bus engine repairs presented by Dr. Smith and Mr. Brown. Any discussion?
Yes. Mr. Jacob and Mr. Bryan, I don't know who taking Mr. Stone's place, but they had mentioned we got those 70 buses down there and we only need 35. Can we get some money off of them to help pay for this $117,553.24? I'm saying, I know there's something in process, but I just want you all to stay focused on those buses. Now, this engine wasn't going to some of them old buses you trying to fix before you sell them now, is it?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question too. Wouldn't it be cheaper to move the wheelchair lift, than put in a whole new engine?
I believe the air aspect is one of the things embedded in this bus because of the nature of the disabilities with these children that are transported. They have to have the air conditioning component. And so I don't believe many of our other buses are equipped with that type of capability.
Okay, all right.
Any further discussion?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
None.
It has been adopted. Thank you.
Very good report, Mr. Brown.
10.5, substitute staff personnel agreement.
Yes, ma'am. This is our yearly reoccurring will sub-agreement for our staffing, for us to be able to provide substitutes for the listed positions in Exhibit A of this documentation. This is for teachers, paraprofessionals, non-instructional aides, media specialists, secretaries, and food service employees. And so if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer those now.
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
The sub shortage, is there any solution? Because we just talked about safety and security and the fact that we don't want to send the security to sub. What are we gonna do?
Yes, ma'am. So we're going to have to get creative. I remember whenever I was in the buildings, we would use people that are on their prep periods. We would use support staff. We would be dynamic, and we're going to have to solve that problem with our safety and security being our #1 priority. And so we're going to charge those. We're going to charge our building leaders in order to be dynamic, and we're going to provide them any support they need to come up with a specific plan for their campus.
Question? Down there. Me, you too?
Any changes to this contract from last year?
Down here?
No, ma'am.
Oh, I wanted to ask a question.
Did you,
Yes, ma'am.
did you have a question, Ms. McClung?
You can go
I'll go
first,
after
Ms.
Dawn.
McLean.
I wanted to know the pay for the subs and how it compares to Little Rock, Pulaski County.
Yes, ma'am. So the pay is comparable, and I have them right here. Non-degree is $88, degree is $98, licensed is $108. Long-term sub non-licensed is $120, and long-term sub licensed is $135. And we are in line with what the other Central Arkansas districts are paying. There was a time, I believe, whenever there was a competition between districts to increase pay, but there is an understanding now because everyone just raises their pay in order to meet the other districts, and so we only hurt ourselves.
Thanks.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
moved down to the same. Ms. Williams?
Oh, yes. Is this a new sub-company? What are we gonna do about the influx of, is this the same company? Little Rock uses them?
Yeah.
We use them?
Yes.
I believe
Right.
so, yes, ma'am.
And we're gonna have the same problem. Is there another company out there? Because we're gonna have the same problem again. Remember, the security people can't go in the classroom this coming year. And that's what happened. They was pulling them out. Now, what are we gonna do? We need to think about having something in place or something, because I know what, call some of them retired teachers and
That's what I
let
was
them do a
gonna say,
day.
yeah.
That would perhaps be a good
would help.
idea,
That would help.
because it's, last year, I understand, if you don't have a teacher in the classroom, the kids are gonna cut up. And then having to pull the security people out to put them in the classroom, that was an issue. So, just as a recommendation, Jacob, and either consideration to you, Mr. Brown, when you all have you all administrative meeting, perhaps maybe we have Valerie and I on the same retired teachers list, and we perhaps can maybe encourage them. They
great.
probably won't be there for 2 or 3, a day or two, but something.
Something
If you
would
can't reach somebody,
Something would help.
then maybe they don't mind helping, really. So that's all I want to say, because I know using this company, bless their heart, everybody's using them and they run out of people.
Yes, ma'am. What I'll do too is I'll speak with Will Sub, and maybe at our next job fair we're planning on having, we can have them set up a booth as well. Maybe as individuals are working towards
That would be
licensure, so they can be fully employed as a classroom teacher is what they're looking for. Maybe in the meantime, they can get signed up with Will Sub so they can sub for us full-time prior to hire.
Okay, that's a great idea.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all I want to say, Madam President.
Ms. Wonkum?
Piggyback, retired teachers, yes. I'm thinking college professors also. I'm thinking parents that are college educated that can help within the district. So yes, absolutely.
Ms. West?
Yes, I was gonna suggest retired teachers also, but then, looking at maybe our college campuses that, are people that are majoring in education or wanting to teach, then looking at those aspects too, to kind of get them some more hands-on experience, and then they can use that as, they have experience in the classroom too, so they may help out too, along with the college professors and all that other stuff. But yeah, I think, trying to tap into some of those schools, and, because we have plenty of colleges here, right here in the central area.
Yes, ma'am. Maybe what the takeaway I'm receiving from everybody is that maybe we need to market our substitute process. Maybe that can go out in maybe one of Dr. Paluski's top 5 or something like that to the community, where we can encourage individuals to sign up through that mechanism, because maybe it just is a lack of exposure is why North Little Rock is not acquiring those individuals through WillSub.
Sounds good.
That's great.
You hit it.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a different sub company? Is that, or is Will Sub pretty much the only one?
There's a couple of them. I believe 3 jump at mind in regards to Central Arkansas, but there is not one from the individuals I've had conversations with, as far as my other HR cohorts, that are not struggling with the same issues from company to company.
Okay.
All the things I've heard from the Board of Education this evening, those problems are perseverating from district to district, from company to company.
We can't hire any subs directly.
Oh, don't forget to call the colleges too. You got Philander Smith College right across the river, Eula. Good assets.
The problem with hiring subs directly is it creates a system where we have to put them through a background check and all of these different avenues, but they're not a consistent employee, if that makes sense. We also don't have something embedded in our standard rates of pay or anything of that, and so it creates a liability that there's concern with, which is why individuals outsource that piece.
I can speak to the availability of other companies, and the district has actually tried that. We used Subteach USA prior to using WillSub, and one of the reasons the district moved to WillSub was because other Pulaski County schools were using WillSub. When we were with Subteach USA, our pool of substitute teachers was limited only to us, but it was a small pool. So the thought process there was using the same company that the other Pulaski County schools are using. We also, when they train with WillSub, they're training for all districts that use WillSub. So the pool of substitutes becomes
Open up
larger
some.
for us to recruit from. So we have used a different company, and we had poor fill rates with them.
Right.
And we came and we switched to WillSub for the poor fill rates. And I believe Ms. McLean was here in the classroom at that time, and I was a principal when that change was made. So,
I have a question, because I know it'll be asked, because I think the idea of pulling people, being creative, but somebody's gonna ask, if they have planning time and we pull them in off their planning time, are they gonna get paid as a sub?
We have mechanisms in place in our policies to accommodate those.
we have a policy and there's state law that licensed teachers who volunteer to cover a class on their planning period are compensated for that.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted it on record.
So worst case scenario, we can't find anyone. Worst case, we can pull someone from central office to fill that position.
I'll be substituting.
Oh, sounds good. Madam President, I so move that we
Wait a minute,
accept
Ms.
the
Williams,
substitute.
did you have, Ms. Williams, you have one, did you have another question?
No, I think you did a phenomenal job. Now, I'm just gonna remind you, one thing, like Euless out there and Philander Smith, and you may have some of these students that are looking for part-time jobs. They don't have classes every day in college.
Yes, ma'am. During the job fair, I'll make sure that we reach out to those institutions as well so they can know where to come and where to sign up so they can be substitutes.
Okay, then.
And
And
Jacob
just for
Smith and
clarity,
Brian
when you
Byrne
say
being that
that
teacher.
the certified teacher would be compensated, it doesn't matter if it's elementary, high school, whichever.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Can I sub?
No.
Yes,
No.
ma'am, if you pass the background
We'll
check.
teach English in the high school.
I just playing.
Got
Madam
it.
President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the substitute staff placement agreement.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the substitute staff placement agreement. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
None.
It has been adopted. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We are down to 10.6, Superintendent's Performance Incentive Bonus.
Who's got the verbiage?
Okay.
Ready? All right. Madam President, I
Yes.
so move that we accept the superintendent's performance incentive bonus that, according to his contract, will be paid by June 30th.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the Superintendent's Performance Incentive Bonus according to his contract, which will be paid by June 30th. Can't be any further discussion, so therefore, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It has been adopted.
Thank you, everyone.
You are welcome.
You're welcome, you get a candy bar extra.
Yep. The addition to the amendment was 10.6A, amendment to the superintendent's contract.
Ready? Madam President, I would like to, I so move, I'm tired, I'm sorry. I so move that we amend the contract number 8,
Yes.
where it says these days will occur past the current year and shall be carried over. So in layman's words, Dr. Paluski gets to keep his vacation days and they can carry over to other years. In addition to number 9, moving and relocation expenses, where it says the superintendent agrees to relocate and reside within the North Little Rock School District, we add or the North Little Rock city limits.
And say the date.
Okay.
And
Second.
expression
Second.
that,
And
Oh.
the date extended
date.
to,
Well, I was gonna do that one
20.
separate. You mean put that one in there too? Okay. In addition, to extend the contract June 16th of 2022 till June 30th, 2024.
Second.
it has been moved and properly second that we amend the superintendent's contract in section 8 and section 9 and the length of the contract to 2024. Any further discussion?
No, ma'am.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
We have you to 2024.
Okay, Hatch, now it's your turn.
And boy,
Bad niece
Hey,
Nats.
Hatch, you have a college degree, right? So you can sub.
No, ma'am, I do not.
Yes, you do.
No, ma'am, I do not.
I thought you had, you and I will discuss it after class.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you do.
yes, sir.
I have the equivalent. Madam President, board members, once again, we have the Amboy issue before you. The superintendent recommends purchasing the Amboy property for the sum of $72,000. I have with me Mr. Adam Jenkins, who is our real estate agent, in the event you have any questions concerning the seller, of which I know nothing about. So,
Madam
Yes.
President, I so move that in Amboy 5600 MacArthur Drive, that we purchase the property for $72,000. It's on page 115, and with the real estate contract on page 117.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the Embor property at 5600 MacArthur Drive for the purchase of $72,000. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
No.
opposed?
Okay. You have
Roll
to-
call, Ms.
roll call.
Coquick.
Dr. Redis,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Person West,
Yes.
Ms. Temple,
No, no.
Ms. Wonkum,
No.
Ms. McLean,
Yes.
That's
It carried it.
4-2. It has been adopted. Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you for your time for going
Thank you,
out
Mr.
there.
Hatch. Yes, Mr. Brown?
10.8, consent agenda.
Is it?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
One additional vote, and that's to authorize you as the superintendent to execute
The
the
purchase.
real estate contract and purchase documents.
Okay.
You
Madam
approve the
President,
purchase, but we just need a specific motion
To
for the superintendent.
authorize me to,
Oh,
on your
to
behalf, to
give you-
purchase.
Give you permission.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Madam President?
Yes.
I so move that Dr. Paluski can sign his John Hancock to the contract.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we give Dr. Paluski authorization to carry out the purchase of the property. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The ayes have it. He can make the purchase.
Thank you, Mr.
All
Brown.
right.
Mr. Hatch?
Consent agenda.
Madam President, I so move that we accept the consent agenda found at 10.8A, 10.8B, 10.8C, 10.8D, 10.8E.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the consent agenda as printed in 10.8 A, B, C, D, and E. Any discussion?
A, B, C.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? It has been adopted. Superintendent's goals, 10.9.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, I do want to just highlight a couple things that were in red based upon your feedback that I did add to my goals. That would be in Goal 2. I did add some language. Mr. Steele had a question around cultural relevancy equity. I did add that one of the components in the curriculum management audit will draw attention to equity in the district. I also added an action 2.2 about providing our teachers and administrators around clear expectations for curriculum planning, delivery, and monitoring. And I believe, Ms. Wonkum, in 3.1, I did add specifically the data budget dashboard that you requested, as was recommended by the Gibson audit report. And Mr. Steele in 3.1 asked us to participate, chief or myself or both, in the Arkansas Center for School Safety State Commission as developed. Those are my recommendations based on your feedback.
Madam
Madam
President. Oh, you got it?
To go on.
Ms. McLean, you got it. Let's hear you.
I don't think I can say all that.
Go for it, go for it.
Okay. Madam President, I so move that we accept the superintendent's goals summary on page 300 to 302 in the notes in the for the North Rock School District. That's for 2022 on page 302.
Second.
Second.
Oh,
Oh, so,
That's okay. It has been moved and properly seconded that we accept the superintendent goals as discussed. They can be found on page 300 and page 302. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It has, any noes? I'm sorry, it's late. It has been adopted. Future meetings. There is one scheduled for July the 7th, but I am recommending and need feedback that if we're gonna be meeting next week, potentially, that we cancel the workshop on July the 7th.
second.
Anybody opposes to that? So therefore, Ms. Colquitt will reach out to us on the special board meeting for next week, and July 7th is canceled. So after we meet next week, we won't meet again until Thursday, July 21st for our regular board meeting.
okay, unless there's a hiring, make sure you have your hiring.
And I'll keep you updated on that. If there is an
Okay.
issue where we need to get some hiring, I'll ask for a quorum. That'll be the only thing that we do.
And if it's, before 12 o'clock, if anybody available in the day, we can do it, but if it's some employment, we can reach until 5.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I was gonna ask, so the special meeting held next week, we can do that during the day if
We
need
can
be?
do that during the
If it's
day.
non-employment?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
We can do that one during the day, but if it's any
the
employment
reorganization.
on there,
We can do that during the day.
no,
I
we
think so.
can't, because reorganization has to do with employment.
That's why I was asking.
So, yeah.
That's why I was
So,
asking.
yeah.
You did help with it.
So
Okay.
it'll have to be at 5:30 as well.
So would it be on Thursday of next week?
I will let you know based upon Monday's meeting, your availability either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
Okay.
All right,
We'll close it out.
I so moved that we adjourn.
Second.
Yeah.
Hey, Dr. Belushi, explain this to us, please.
I do want to let everybody know we're, based upon your approval of our reorganization, we are going to send out a press release so
Okay.
we can notify parents of the
We gotta sign.